500 years before the birth of Jesus, a man received a message that would change the course of human history. Pause 2s. He was not a king. He was not a high priest. He was a prisoner of war, kneeling in the dust of a foreign land. Pause 3s. And on that night, a celestial being appeared before him with information no human had ever possessed, the exact mathematical date when the Messiah would enter Jerusalem. Pause 2s. 483 years, counted day by day, with no room for error. Pause 3s. The prophecy is recorded in Daniel chapter 9, and when you do the math, the result is staggering. Pause 4s. Let us go back. The year was 605 BC. Jerusalem, the city God had chosen for his dwelling, was under siege. The armies of Babylon had crossed the desert. The Temple of Solomon was still standing, but its days were numbered. Pause 2s. Among the captives was a young man from the nobility of Judah. We know him as Daniel. He was torn from his land, his family, and taken to the heart of the most powerful empire in the ancient world, a place of towering ziggurats and stone idols, where the God of Israel was unknown. Pause 3s. And there, in that pagan land, Daniel did something that would define his entire life. Pause 2s. He refused to forget. While others bowed to the pressure of exile, Daniel held fast. But there was something weighing on his heart more heavily than any threat of death. A promise left behind by the prophet Jeremiah. Pause 2s. When 70 years are accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you and cause you to return to this place. Pause 3s. 70 years. That was the decree, and now, Daniel was an old man. He had watched empires rise and fall. He knew by his own calculations that the time was nearly over. Pause 2s. But the question burning within him was simple. Did God still remember Jerusalem? Daniel unrolled the scroll of Jeremiah again. He read the words anew, and then he did something that would change the course of prophetic history. Pause 3s. He knelt. He put on sackcloth. He covered himself in ashes. Pause 2s. It was not a casual prayer. It was the cry of a torn soul. He confessed the sins of his people. He did not ask for power. He asked for mercy. Pause 3s. And suddenly, the air in the room shifted. A presence entered the chamber. Pause 2s. Before Daniel could even finish his sentence, he was interrupted. The angel Gabriel appeared, saying, "O Daniel, I have come to give you skill and understanding, for you are greatly beloved." Pause 3s. Heaven did not wait. The answer was dispatched the moment his knees touched the ground. But Gabriel did not come to show him another vision of beasts or empires. He came with a stopwatch. Pause 2s. He delivered the prophecy of the 70 weeks. Pause 2s. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people, not weeks of days, but weeks of years. A divine period of 490 years to finish the transgression and bring in everlasting righteousness. Pause 3s. But hidden within these verses was a specific mathematical key. Gabriel gave a starting point. From the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the Prince. Pause 3s. Be careful now. Do not miss this. Pause 2s. The angel specified a period of exactly 483 years, or to be precise, 173,880 days. Pause 4s. When you start that countdown from the decree of Artaxerxes in 445 BC, and you count forward, day by day, the clock stops on a specific Sunday in the spring of AD 32. Pause 3s. The very day a carpenter from Nazareth rode into Jerusalem on a donkey and allowed the crowds to crown him king. Pause 4s. Coincidence? Or the most precise prophecy ever given to mankind? To understand the miracle of the final date, we must first unlock the code of the starting line. Pause 3s. The prophecy begins in Daniel chapter 9, verse 24. Gabriel declares, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city. Pause 2s. In our modern minds, we hear weeks and we think of 7 days, but the Hebrew word used here is shavuim. Pause 2s. It simply means sevens, 70 units of 7. Pause 2s. Just as a decade implies 10 years, a shavuim implies 7 years. Therefore, Gabriel was not speaking of 490 days. He was revealing a divine calendar of 490 years. Pause 4s. A period of time carved out of eternity, specifically for Israel and Jerusalem. But why? What was the purpose of this countdown? Pause 2s. The angel lists 6 specific goals in the very same verse, and when you read them, you realize this is no ordinary political timeline. Pause 3s. To finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up the vision, and to anoint the most holy. Pause 4s. Look at that list again. Pause 2s. To make an end of sins. No human king could do this. Cyrus the Great could not do this. A political leader can rebuild a wall, but he cannot reconstruct the human soul. Pause 3s. Gabriel was telling Daniel that within this period of 490 years, God would provide a final solution for the problem of evil itself. This was not a schedule for a construction project. It was the calendar of redemption. Pause 3s. But a countdown needs a starting gun. Pause 2s. Gabriel said, Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem, unto the Messiah, the Prince. Pause 3s. The clock begins, with a specific command. But here is where history has baffled scholars for centuries. Pause 2s. Because in the ancient records, there was not just one commandment, there were 4. Pause 3s. This is the detective work of faith. If you pick the wrong decree, you get the wrong Messiah. If you start the clock at the wrong time, you miss the time of your visitation. Pause 2s. So, we must examine the evidence, trial by trial. The first candidate for the starting point appeared in 538 BC. Pause 2s. Cyrus the Great, the Persian conqueror, issued a royal edict permitting the Jews to return to their land. The book of Ezra records his words, "The Lord God of heaven hath charged me to build him a house at Jerusalem." Pause 3s. Build him a house. Take careful note of that phrase. Pause 2s. Cyrus authorized the reconstruction of the temple, the house of God. But Gabriel's prophecy was far more specific. He did not say, commandment to restore the sanctuary. He said, restore and build Jerusalem. Pause 3s. The city, the streets, the defensive walls. Pause 2s. Under Cyrus, the altar was rebuilt, but the city itself remained a ruin. It was a defenseless collection of hovels, surrounded by broken stones, so the heavenly clock did not start here. Pause 3s. Then came a second decree, issued by King Darius in 520 BC, but this merely reaffirmed the order of Cyrus to finish the temple. Again, the focus was the sanctuary, not the city. Pause 2s. Years passed, decades passed. Then came a third decree in 458 BC, issued by Artaxerxes to Ezra the scribe. Pause 2s. Many scholars have tried to force this date to fit the timeline, but read the text in Ezra chapter 7 carefully. The king granted authority to establish the law, to appoint magistrates, and to beautify the temple. It was a spiritual restoration, not a physical reconstruction of the city's defenses. Pause 3s. If you start the countdown here, you arrive too early. The math does not work. The Messiah does not appear on time. Pause 2s. For nearly 100 years after the destruction, Jerusalem was a city of ghosts. a place where the walls were breached and the gates were burned with fire. It seemed God was silent. Pause 3s. But there was a fourth decree. A decree hidden in the archives of history, waiting for the precise moment on God's calendar. Pause 2s. And this one fits the keyhole perfectly. In the 20th year of King Artaxerxes Longimanus, in the month of Nisan, the year was 445 BC. Pause 3s. A man named Nehemiah stood before the most powerful ruler on earth. He was not a priest like Ezra. He was a cupbearer, a high official in the royal court of Shushan. Pause 2s. The king noticed a deep sorrow on his servant's face and asked, "Why is your countenance sad?" Pause 2s. Nehemiah was terrified. To show sadness before a Persian king could be a death sentence. But he gathered his courage and spoke the words that would unlock the prophetic clock. Pause 3s. If it please the king, send me unto Judah, unto the city of my father's sepulchres, that I may build it. Pause 3s. Listen closely. That I may build it, not the temple, the city. Pause 2s. Nehemiah was asking for permission to rebuild the walls, the gates, and the fortifications. He was asking to restore Jerusalem as a functioning, defensible capital. Pause 3s. And against all odds, the king granted his request. Artaxerxes issued letters to the governors. He gave timber from the royal forests. He sent captains of the army to escort him. Pause 2s. This was the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem. Pause 3s. Historians and astronomers have fixed this date with remarkable precision. The 20th year of Artaxerxes began in the spring of 445 BC, specifically in the month of Nisan. Pause 2s March. 445 BC. Pause 3s. The trigger was pulled. The heavenly stopwatch began to run. Gabriel's words were no longer just a promise floating in the ether. They had become a historical timeline. Pause 3s. From this exact moment, we simply need to count. We do not need to guess. We do not need to speculate. We only need to do the math that God gave us. Pause 2s. And when you run the numbers, they lead to a day that will make you tremble.
Was measured by the promise of redemption. The clock had begun, and history would never be the same. Now the mathematics becomes extraordinary. 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, even in troublous times.
Now, the mathematics becomes extraordinary. Pause 3s. Gabriel gave Daniel a specific equation. He did not simply say 69 weeks. He divided the time into two distinct segments. Pause 2s, 7 weeks and 62 weeks. Pause 3s. Why the division? Because the first period, 7 weeks or 49 years, was allotted for the physical reconstruction of Jerusalem. As the angel said, the street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. Pause 3s. And history confirms this. It took exactly 49 years from Nehemiah's arrival until the last debris was cleared and the city was fully functional again. Pause 2s. Then followed the second period, 62 weeks, 434 years. Pause 2s. A long silence, a time of waiting, a time when the prophets ceased to speak and the heavens seemed like brass. Pause 3s. When you add these two numbers together, 7 weeks plus 62 weeks, you get the total countdown, 69 weeks of years. Pause 2s. 69 times 7 equals 483 years. Pause 4s. 483 years. From the decree of Artaxerxes to the coming of the Messiah. Pause 2s. But here is where many seekers lose the path. Here is where the skeptics fail. Pause 3s. If you take 483 years and apply them to our modern solar calendar, the calendar of 365 days, you will miss the date. You will arrive at a time when Jesus was already gone. Pause 3s. We must understand a crucial detail about how the Ancient of Days measures time. The prophetic calendar used in Scripture does not follow the erratic orbit of the earth. It follows the perfect order of creation. Pause 3s. God uses a year of 360 days. Pause 3s. This is not speculation. The Bible confirms this pattern repeatedly. In the book of Genesis, during the flood, the waters prevailed for 150 days. The text tells us this started on the 17th day of the second month and ended on the 17th day of the seventh month. Pause 3s. 5 months exactly. 150 days divided by 5 equals 30 days. Pause 2s. In the book of Revelation, the Great Tribulation is described as 42 months and also as 1,260 days. Pause 2s. Do the math. 1,260 divided by 42 is 30. Pause 3s. A biblical month is 30 days. A biblical year is 360 days. This is the prophetic year, and this is the key that unlocks the mystery of Daniel. Pause 3s. So we must convert the prophecy. We must translate Daniel's years into the language of days. Pause 2s. 483 years multiplied by 360 days. Pause 4s. The result is a number that should be burned into your memory. 173,880 days. Pause 4s. 180 days. Pause 2s. This is the exact duration of the countdown, not a day more, not a day less. From the moment Nehemiah received the letter to the moment the king reveals himself. Pause 3s. Now, let us count. For centuries, this calculation remained a matter of faith, but in the 19th century, it became a matter of forensic evidence. Pause 3s. A man named Sir Robert Anderson took up the challenge. He was not merely a theologian, he was the Assistant Commissioner of the London Metropolitan Police, the Chief of the Criminal Investigation Department at Scotland Yard. Pause 3s. He approached the Book of Daniel not as a religious text, but as a cold case file. He demanded facts. He demanded astronomical verification. Pause 2s. In his landmark investigation, The Coming Prince, Anderson collaborated with the royal astronomer to map the lunar cycles of the ancient world against our modern calendar. Pause 3s. Here is what they found. Pause 2s. The starting point was fixed. The month of Nisan, in the 20th year of Artaxerxes. By cross-referencing Persian records and solar eclipses, they pinpointed the date of the decree to March 14th, 445 BC. Pause 3s. From that day, the clock began to tick. 173,880 days. Pause 2s. If you simply add 483 solar years, you fall short. You must account for the leap years. You must account for the difference between the lunar year of the prophets and the solar year of the seasons. Pause 3s. Anderson did the math. He counted the days. He moved forward through the rise of Rome, through the reign of Herod, into the era of Pontius Pilate. Pause 3s. And the countdown ended on April 6th, AD 32. Pause 4s. According to the Jewish calendar, this was the 10th of Nisan. Pause 2s. Why does this specific date send a shiver down the spine of every biblical scholar? Pause 3s. Because the 10th of Nisan was not a random Sunday. It was the precise day commanded by God in the book of Exodus, chapter 12. It was Lamb Selection Day. Pause 3s. On the 10th of Nisan, every Jewish family had to select a spotless lamb. bring it into their home, and inspect it for 4 days before the Passover sacrifice. Pause 3s. For 1500 years, Israel had rehearsed this day. They had chosen a lamb from the flock. But on April 6th, AD 32, God chose his lamb. Pause 3s. On that exact day, the countdown hit 0. It was spring in Jerusalem. The city was swelling with pilgrims from every corner of the known world. The air was thick with the scent of roasting lambs and the tension of Roman occupation. Pause 3s. On that morning, Jesus of Nazareth did something he had never done before. He deliberately arranged a public coronation. Pause 2s. He sent 2 disciples to a nearby village to fetch a donkey, a colt on which no man had ever sat. Pause 2s. Why a donkey? Because 500 years earlier, the prophet Zechariah had written, "Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Behold, thy king cometh unto thee, lowly and riding upon a donkey." Pause 3s. As he rode down the Mount of Olives, the crowd erupted. They cut down palm branches. They spread their cloaks on the dusty road, creating a royal carpet for the carpenter king. Pause 2s. And then they shouted the specific words of Psalm 118, the Messianic Psalm. Pause 2s. Hosanna, blessed is the King of Israel that cometh in the name of the Lord. Pause 3s. We must pause to understand the magnitude of this moment. For 3 years, Jesus had strictly avoided this title. Pause 2s. When he healed the leper, he said, "Tell no man." When the crowds tried to take him by force to make him king, he withdrew to the mountains alone. Time and time again he declared, "My hour is not yet come." Pause 3s. But on this day, April 6th, AD 32, everything changed. Pause 2s. He did not silence them. He did not hide. He rode into the city gates with the praises of the people ringing in his ears. He accepted their worship. He accepted the title of Messiah. Pause 3s. Why? What made this day different from all other days? Pause 2s. Because the calendar of heaven had reached its fullness. The 173,980 days were complete. The prince whom Gabriel had promised to Daniel was presenting himself to his people at the exact hour appointed by the Father. Pause 3s. But amidst the celebration, there were those who realized the danger. The Pharisees, the religious leaders, pushed through the crowd. They were outraged. They turned to Jesus and demanded, "Master, rebuke thy disciples." Pause 3s. And Jesus' answer revealed the cosmic necessity of the moment. Jesus turned to the Pharisees. The noise of the crowd was deafening, but his voice cut through the chaos like a sword. Pause 3s. I tell you that, if these should hold their peace, the stones would immediately cry out. Pause 3s. Why would stones cry out? Pause 2s. Because that day could not pass in silence. It was a prophetic appointment fixed before the foundation of the world. If humanity refused to acknowledge the King, the very rocks of the earth, the inanimate creation, would have to testify to the timeline of the Creator. Pause 3s. But then, the celebration turned to tears. Pause 2s. Luke records that as Jesus came near and saw the city, he wept over it. Pause 3s. He said, "If thou hadst known, even thou, at least in this thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace, but now they are hid from thine eyes." Pause 3s. Notice the precision. This, thy day. Pause 2s. Not this year. Not this era. Pause 2s. Jesus was holding them accountable for a specific date on the calendar. He was holding them accountable for knowing the book of Daniel. Pause 3s. Because they missed the day. They missed the peace. They did not recognize the time of their visitation. And because of that ignorance, judgment was coming. Pause 2s. This brings us to the most chilling realization of all. The first 69 weeks were fulfilled with absolute mathematical perfection.
All was written.
The clock that started with Artaxerxes stopped exactly when the king arrived. Pause threes. But Gabriel's prophecy did not end with a coronation. Pause twos. If you read closely, the next sentence in Daniel chapter 9 is not about a kingdom. It is not about a throne. It is about a murder. Pause threes. Gabriel said, "And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off." Pause fours. The crowd was shouting Hosanna on Sunday, but the prophecy declared that within days, those shouts would turn to silence. Pause threes. The king had arrived, but he had not come to conquer Rome. He had come to die.
Promise yet to come. A space remains. What was measured with perfect precision will be completed with the same faithfulness.
The voices changed in 5 days!
What looked like failure was required by prophecy. After the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off. This was not a gentle death. The Anointed One.
The crowd that shouted Hosanna on Sunday was shouting Crucify him by Friday. Pause threes. 5 days. That was all it took for the atmosphere to change, for worship to turn into hatred, for the same voices that celebrated the king's arrival to demand his blood. Pause threes. To the human eye, this looked like a tragedy. It looked like a political failure. A young prophet, betrayed by his friend, arrested in the dead of night, and dragged before a mock court. Pause threes. But to the eye of prophecy, this was exactly what the calendar required. Pause twos. Gabriel had already foretold this dark twist 5 centuries earlier. In verse 26 of Daniel chapter 9, the angel declared something disturbing, something that did not fit the Jewish expectation of a conquering hero. Pause threes. And after 62 weeks, shall Messiah be cut off. Pause fours. Shall be cut off. In Hebrew, the word used is yikaret. Pause twos. This is not a gentle word. It does not mean to pass away peacefully in old age. It does not mean to ascend into heaven like Elijah. Pause threes. Yikaret is a violent legal term drawn from Israel's sacrificial and judicial system. It means to be severed, to be destroyed, to be violently removed from the land of the living. It was the specific word used to describe the death penalty for the most serious sins. Pause threes. Gabriel was telling Daniel, the Anointed One will not take the throne immediately. He will be executed. He will be treated as a criminal. He will be cut down like a tree at its root. Pause threes. Imagine Daniel hearing this. He was a prisoner of war. He longed for a liberator, and yet the angel was describing a Messiah who would become a prisoner himself. Pause twos. Why? Why would God send his Holy One only to have him slaughtered? Pause threes. The answer lies in the next 3 words of the prophecy. 3 words that carry the weight of the entire gospel. 3 words that explain the mystery of the cross. Pause twos. But not for himself. But not for himself. Pause threes. Some translations render the Hebrew phrase vine lo as and shall have nothing, or and there is no one for him. Pause 2s. It paints a picture of utter desolation. The Messiah dies possessing nothing, no kingdom, no army, no crown. Even his clothes are gambled away by soldiers. He is abandoned by his friends, rejected by his nation, and seemingly forsaken by God. Pause 3s. But the deeper meaning, the theological heartbeat of this prophecy, is substitution. Pause 2s. If the Anointed One was cut off by the supreme penalty of the law, and yet he had no sin of his own, then whose sin was he dying for? Pause 3s. 500 years before the cross, Gabriel was describing a vicarious death, a death not for the guilty, but instead of the guilty. Pause 3s. To understand this, we must open the scroll of the prophet Isaiah, who wrote in the same era. Listen to the convergence of their visions. Pause 2s. Daniel tells us the time. Isaiah tells us the reason. Pause 2s. Surely he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. Pause 4s. Wounded for our transgressions. Pause 2s. This is the key that unlocks the 6 goals of Daniel 9:24. Remember the list. To finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity. Pause 3s. How could a holy God simply make an end of sins? He cannot just ignore them. Justice demands payment. The law demands blood. Pause 2s. Christian theology answers this with a single word: Golgotha. Pause 2s. On that Friday, outside the city walls, the Messiah finished the transgression. He took the collective guilt of the human race, past, present, and future, and absorbed the judgment it deserved. Pause 3s. He was cut off so that we could be grafted in. He had nothing so that we could have everything. Pause 3s. And at the very moment of his death, the physical world responded to the spiritual reality. Matthew chapter 27 records the moment. Pause 2s. Now, from the 6th hour, there was darkness over all the land unto the 9th hour. Pause 3s. And then, as the Messiah breathed his last, the earth shook, the rocks split, and inside the temple, a terrifying sound was heard. Pause 2s. And behold, the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom. Pause 4s. We must understand what this veil was. It was not a flimsy curtain. It was a massive barrier, 60 feet high, woven of blue, purple, and scarlet thread. Ancient records tell us it was as thick as a man's hand. Pause 3s. For 1,500 years since the days of Moses, this veil had screamed one message to humanity: stay out. Pause 2s. It separated the Holy of Holies, the dwelling place of God, from the sinful world. Only the high priest could enter, and only once a year, on the Day of Atonement, trembling with a bowl of blood in his hands. Pause 3s. But at 3 o'clock on that Friday afternoon, the barrier was destroyed. Pause 2s. Notice the detail given by the gospel writer, from the top to the bottom. Pause 3s. If men had torn it, they would have started from the bottom. But this tear began from the height of heaven. Divine hands were tearing up the old contract. Pause 3s. In that split second, the entire Levitical system became obsolete. Pause 2s. The thousands of lambs slaughtered over the centuries, the rivers of blood that had flowed from the altar, the priesthood, the rituals, all of it stopped, not because it had failed, but because it had been fulfilled. Pause 3s. The shadow gave way to the substance. The true lamb had died. Pause 2s. The writer of Hebrews explains it perfectly. By his own blood he entered in once into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us. Pause 3s. Eternal redemption. Not a temporary covering that needed to be renewed every year, but a finished transaction. Pause 2s. Gabriel's checklist was being ticked off one by one. To make reconciliation for iniquity, done. To bring in everlasting righteousness, done. Pause 3s. But there was still one part of Gabriel's message that had not yet happened. A dark postscript that would terrify the nation. Gabriel's prophecy contained a terrifying part 2. Pause 2s. After the Messiah is cut off, what happens to the stage on which he stood? What happens to the city that rejected the time of its visitation? Pause 3s. The angel was blunt. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Pause 4s. The city and the sanctuary, Jerusalem and the temple. Pause 2s. 40 years after the cross. The bill came due. The year was AD 70. Pause 2s. The Roman general Titus, son of the emperor, marched 4 legions to the gates of Jerusalem. 60,000 soldiers surrounded the very walls Nehemiah had rebuilt with such hope 5 centuries earlier. Pause 3s. The siege was unspeakable. The historian Josephus, who was an eyewitness, records scenes that defy human comprehension. Famine, madness, death piling up in the narrow streets. Pause 3s. And then, on the 9th day of the month of Avar, the fire came. Pause 2s. A Roman soldier hurled a burning torch through a window of the temple. The cedar wood caught fire. Within hours, the holy house, the pride of Israel, the wonder of the ancient world, was a furnace. Pause 3s. But notice the specific detail of the prophecy. It did not just say, burn. It said, destroy. Pause 2s. As the fire raged, the massive quantities of gold overlaying the interior walls melted. The liquid gold ran down into the cracks between the massive stones of the foundation. Pause 3s. When the fire died down, Roman soldiers, driven by greed, literally pried the temple apart, stone by stone, to retrieve the metal. Pause 3s. Do you remember the words of Jesus in Matthew 24? As he looked at these same buildings, he prophesied, "Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down." Pause 4s. Not by accident, not by coincidence, but because Gabriel had said it, and Jesus confirmed it. Pause 2s. The sanctuary was gone. The altar was gone. The system of sacrifice was finished forever. The smoke rising over Jerusalem in AD 70 signaled the end of an age. Pause 2s. For the Jewish people who did not accept the Nazarene, this was a catastrophe without precedent. Without a temple, there is no altar. Without an altar, there is no sacrifice. Without sacrifice, there is no atonement according to the law of Moses. Pause 3s. Judaism had to be completely reshaped. It became a religion of rabbis and synagogues, rather than priests and blood. Pause 2s. But for the followers of Jesus, the destruction was a somber confirmation. It was the physical proof of what had happened spiritually 40 years earlier when the veil was torn. Pause 3s. God had moved house. He no longer dwelt in a box made of cedar and gold. He now dwelt in the hearts of those who accepted the Messiah who was cut off. Pause 3s. Everything Gabriel foretold had come to pass. The decree, the reconstruction, the specific date of the prince's arrival, the death of the Messiah, the end of the sacrificial system, the destruction of the city. Pause 3s. But wait. Pause 2s. There is a mathematical problem that we cannot ignore. A loose thread that, if pulled, unravels the future of the world. Pause 3s. Gabriel promised 70 weeks, 490 years. Pause 2s. But let us look at the timeline again. From the decree of Artaxerxes to the death of the Messiah was 69 weeks. 483 years. Pause 3s. 69 is not 70. Pause 2s. 1 week is missing. 7 years are unaccounted for. Pause 3s. If the first 69 weeks were fulfilled with literal forensic precision, where is the 70th week? Did God forget the math? Did the prophetic clock break? Pause 3s. Or has the clock simply been paused? Pause 3s. What if there is a gap in time? A mysterious interval between the 69th week and the 70th week. An interval that has lasted for 2,000 years. Pause 3s. And if that clock starts ticking again, what happens to the world?
The story waits for its final chapter. Here lies the greatest mystery of biblical chronology. The first 69 weeks were fulfilled with precision. The years after the cross did not bring lasting peace.
Here lies the greatest mystery of biblical chronology. Pause 3s. Gabriel spoke of 70 weeks, 490 years determined upon the Jewish people. Pause 2s. We have seen the first 69 weeks fulfilled with absolute precision. From the command of Artaxerxes to the cutting off of the Messiah, the math is undeniable. Pause 3s. But if you look for the 70th week immediately after the cross, you will not find it. Pause 2s. The 7 years following the crucifixion did not bring the end of sins or everlasting righteousness. Instead, they brought the stoning of Stephen, the persecution of the church, and eventually the Roman legions. Pause 3s. So, where is the final week? Pause 2s. The answer is found in a prophetic gap, a divine pause button that God pressed the moment Israel rejected their king. Pause 3s. Jesus himself hinted at this mystery in the very beginning of his ministry. In Luke chapter 4, he stood up in the synagogue of Nazareth to read. He opened the scroll of the prophet Isaiah. Pause 3s. He read, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, to preach the acceptable year of the Lord." Pause 2s. And then he closed the book. Pause 3s. But if you go back to Isaiah chapter 61, the sentence does not end there. The original verse says, "To preach the acceptable year of the Lord and the day of vengeance of our God." Pause 4s. Jesus stopped in the middle of a sentence. He stopped at a comma. Pause 3s. Why? Because the acceptable year of the Lord was his first coming, but the day of vengeance belongs to his second coming. Pause 3s. Between that comma and the rest of the sentence lies a gap of 2,000 years. Pause 2s. We are living in that comma. The theologians call it the church age, the times of the Gentiles, a period of grace where the countdown for Israel is suspended so that the rest of the world can be invited in. Pause 3s. God stopped the clock for you. He stopped the clock for me. Pause 2s. But the clock has not been broken. It has only been paused. And the Bible warns us that one day, very soon, the pause will be lifted. The comma will end. And the final week, the 70th week, will begin. The 70 weeks are not merely a record of the past. They are a roadmap for the end of the age. Pause 3s. When the pause button is released, when the final grain of sand in the church age falls, the clock will resume exactly where it stopped, at 69 weeks. Pause 3s, Daniel. Chapter 9, verse 27 describes the scenario for the final 7 years of human history. Pause 2s. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. Pause 3s. Who is he? Pause 2s. Grammatically, the he refers back to the last person mentioned in the previous verse. The prince that shall come. The figure whose people destroyed the city. Pause 3s. This is the Antichrist, the final world dictator. He does not begin with war. He begins with a handshake. He begins with a peace treaty. Pause 2s. He will succeed where every diplomat, every president, and every prime minister has failed. He will confirm a covenant regarding Jerusalem. He will guarantee security for Israel. He will likely allow the rebuilding of the temple. Pause 3s. For the first half of the week, 3.5 years, the world will hail him as a savior. Peace and safety will seem to have finally arrived. Pause 2s. But the prophecy warns, in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. Pause 3s. Halfway through the 7 years, the mask falls off. Pause 2s. He enters the rebuilt temple, he stops the worship of God, and he commits the act that Daniel calls the overspreading of abominations. Pause 3s. Jesus warned of this specific moment in Matthew 24. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Pause 3s. Why flee? Because the great tribulation has begun. Pause 2s. The final 3.5 years will not be a time of peace. They will be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation. Pause 3s. This is the 70th week. It is the time of Jacob's trouble. It is the furnace of affliction designed to bring Israel back to her Messiah. Pause 2s. And just like the first 69 weeks, this final week has a fixed limit. It is not open-ended. It is counted day by day. The prophet Daniel was specific about the duration of this final crisis. Pause 2s. In chapter 12, verse 7, he swears by him that liveth forever that it shall be for a time, times, and an half. Pause 3s. 1 year, 2 years, and half a year, 3.5 years, 1,260 days. Pause 3s. Why does God allow this? Why must the 70th week be a time of such excruciating pressure? Pause 2s. It is not to destroy Israel, it is to break them. Pause 2s. It is to strip away every earthly reliance on treaties, on superpowers, on their own military strength, until they have nowhere left to look but up. Pause 3s.
70 weeks.
The prophet Zechariah, writing about this exact moment, describes a supernatural transformation. As the armies of the world surround Jerusalem, as the Antichrist prepares his final assault, something breaks in the heart of the nation. Pause 3s. God speaks through the prophet in Zechariah 12, verse 10. Pause 2s. And I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplications, and they shall look upon me whom they have pierced. Pause 4s. Whom they have pierced. Pause 2s. In that moment of total desperation, the scales fall from their eyes. They realize that the one coming on the clouds is not a stranger. He is the one who was cut off, the one who died, not for himself, but for them. Pause 3s. The prophecy says, and they shall mourn for him, as one mourneth for his only son. Pause 3s. This is the fulfillment of Gabriel's first goal, to finish the transgression. Pause 2s. The national transgression of rejecting the Messiah is finally over. The 70th week accomplishes what the previous thousands of years could not. It brings the remnant of Israel to their knees in repentance. Pause 3s. And when that happens, The countdown ends. Pause 2s. The 490 years are complete. The 6 goals of Daniel 9:24 are fully achieved, and the stage is set for the king to return, not on a donkey this time, but on a white horse. When the 70 weeks are finished, history as we know it comes to an end. Pause 3s. The prophet Daniel saw this moment in a vision in chapter 2. He saw a stone cut out without hands that struck the great image of human empires at its feet and ground them to powder. Pause 3s. That stone is the Messiah returning in glory. Pause 2s. He does not come as a suffering servant. He comes as the Lion of the tribe of Judah. He comes to destroy the Antichrist, to save the remnant of Israel, and to establish the kingdom that will never be destroyed. Pause 3s. The everlasting righteousness predicted by Gabriel finally descends upon the earth. Pause 2s. The math is complete. Pause 2s. 7 weeks for the rebuilding, 62 weeks for the waiting, 1 final week for the purification. Total, 490 years. Pause 3s. Every day is accounted for. Every promise is kept. The God who calculated the first arrival to the very day has calculated the second arrival with the same precision. Pause 3s. But here is the thought that should keep you awake at night. Pause 2s. If the first 69 weeks are history and the 70th week is future, then where are we right now? Pause 3s. We are on the edge. Pause 2s. We are living in the final moments of the gap. The pause button is about to be released. The shadow of the 70th week is already falling across our world. Pause 3s. The stage is set. The actors are in place. Israel is back in the land, a necessary condition for the prophecy to resume. The technology for a global tracker is here. The desire for a global peacemaker is here. Pause 3s. Daniel asked for an answer about his people. God gave him the timeline of the universe. Pause 2s. And now the question turns to you. Pause 2s. If you know the schedule, if you know the king is coming, why are you living as if this world is your permanent home? Pause 3s. The countdown is not just for Jerusalem, it is for you.
The message was never meant to stay in one place. The countdown invites you to walk differently.
The king is coming. Be ready.
We have traveled a long road together. He is not a god of approximations.
We have traveled a long road together, from the dust of Babylon to the courts of Persia, to the cross at Golgotha, and finally, to the smoke of the Great Tribulation. Pause 3s. And now, we are left with a single undeniable fact. Pause 2s. The God of the Bible is not a God of approximations. He is not a God of close enough. He is a God of forensic precision. Pause 3s. If the first 69 weeks were fulfilled to the exact day, if the decree was issued on the exact date, if the Messiah rode into Jerusalem at the exact hour appointed 5 centuries earlier, then we must face a terrifying and glorious conclusion. Pause 4s. The 70th week is just as real. Pause 2s. We cannot accept the historical accuracy of the past and reject the prophetic warning of the future. The same Gabriel who announced the first coming has announced the second. The same mathematics that guaranteed the cross guarantees the crown. Pause threes. For 2,000 years, the world has lived in the gap. We have grown comfortable. We have begun to think that history is an endless cycle, going nowhere. Pause twos. But Daniel chapter 9 destroys that illusion. It tells us that history is not a circle. It is a line. It has a beginning, and it has an end. Pause threes. The clock is not broken. The pause button is simply held down by the finger of God's mercy. Pause twos. He is waiting. He is holding back the tide of the 70th week for one specific reason: to give you and me time to find our place in His plan. Pause threes. But as we look at the world today, at the wars, at the convergence of technology and control, we must ask ourselves, is the finger about to lift? The tragedy of Jerusalem in AD 32 was not that they were evil, it was that they were distracted. Pause threes. They were busy with commerce, they were busy with politics, they were busy with religion, and in their busyness, they missed the most important appointment in the history of the universe. Pause threes. Jesus wept over the city, saying, "Because thou knewest not the time of thy visitation." Pause twos. Do not let him weep over you. Pause threes. We are living in a world that is louder, faster, and more distracted than first century Jerusalem. The enemy does not need to make you a bad person. He only needs to make you a busy person. Pause threes. He wants you to ignore the math. He wants you to think you have 70 years left, when you might only have 7 days. Pause twos. Daniel was a man of high position, yet he stopped everything to study the scrolls. He stopped everything to pray. And because he sought the truth, heaven called him greatly beloved. Pause threes. God is looking for Daniels in this generation. Pause twos. He is looking for men and women who are not afraid to look at the clock, who understand that the gap is closing, who know that the next sound from heaven will not be a whisper, but a trumpet. Pause threes. If the 70th week began tomorrow, where would you stand? Pause twos. Would you be swept away by the deception of the prince who is to come? Or would you be anchored in the word of the true prince? Pause threes. The prophecy of the 70 weeks is not given to scare you. It is given to prepare you. It is the mercy of God, shouting across the centuries, telling you to get your house in order. Pause threes. The countdown has already been calculated. The date is set. The king is at the door. So, what is your duty? Pause twos. You are not just a spectator watching a documentary. You are now a witness to the evidence. Pause threes. The prophet Ezekiel wrote, "If the watchmen see the sword come, and blow not the trumpet, and the people be not warned, their blood will I require at the watchman's hand." Pause fours. You have seen the sword coming. You know the timeline. You know the math. Pause twos. Do not keep this revelation to yourself. There is someone in your life, a son, a daughter, a friend, who is asleep in the gap. They do not know what time it is. Pause threes. Share this message with them, not to win an argument, but to save a soul. Pause twos. And if you want to continue this journey, if you want to be part of a community that refuses to sleep while the world burns, then take your stand with us. Pause threes. Support this work. Join this channel. Help us blow the trumpet while there is still time. Pause threes. Daniel knelt in the dust of Babylon, a prisoner with no hope, until he looked at the clock of God. And in the darkness of his exile, he saw the light of the coming king. Pause threes. The dust of this world is shaking. The shadows are lengthening. Pause twos. Look up. Lift up your heads. Pause twos. For your redemption draweth nigh. Pause fives.
Is that consistent across all regional markets?
Yes, especially in the EMEA sector.
This moment is mercy.
Look up. Your redemption draws near.